It's weighing in, NJ.com's high school wrestling podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's another wrestling season in New Jersey. We're here to talk about it again. I'm Bob Batters, your host of NJ.com's Weighing In podcast, joined by our wrestling writers, Ryan Patti, Jake Aferiat, Joe Zedalis, Bill Evans, not with us today, but Bill will be back next time. So we'll pick up the South Jersey slack while Bill is not here. And it's December, which means it's a little bit of a weird time. The season has started. It's a little fractured. We've got tournaments. We got dual meets. We've got kids in the lineup. We've got kids out the lineup, and a lot to unpack from a busy first week of high school wrestling in Jersey. So, guys, I'll welcome you in and just say hello. How's everyone doing?
Doing well.
All right.
What's up, guys? Glad to be back.
And a lot happened early because New Jersey is allowed to participate earlier than we have in previous seasons. And one of the biggest tournaments in the nation that our teams, aside from Blair Academy, has never been able to enter is the Walsh Ironman out in at Walsh Jesuit High School in Ohio. We had Christian Brothers Academy and Del Barton out there joining Blair Academy. And we had some standout wrestlers led by our reigning New Jersey Wrestler of the Year, Ryan. So a huge tournament for Jaden James. Picked up a signature win to add to his impressive resume. And you can't really start the season better than he did, Ryan.
Yeah, what more can be said about Jaden James, guys? He's our reigning Wrestler of the Year. He's a state champ. He's a two-time finalist, a three-time medalist. He's a Beast of the East champ, Powerade champ. He's a Penn State commit, and now he's an Ironman champ. He beat Melvin Miller from Bishop McCourt, one of the three studs on that team. It's Jax Forrest, Bo Bassett, and Melvin Miller, and Jaden beat Miller at 165 on Saturday. Miller was number 3 on Flow Wrestling in the pound-for-pound rankings, and Jaden was number 4. This was probably Jaden's most monumental win. I mean, after all he did last year, a lot of lopsided wins where he kind of just wrecked everyone. He was down 4-0 in this match, and he came back to win at 8-5. And, you know, you look at this Delby team as a whole. CJ Betts, the 190-pounder senior, he also made the finals for Delby but lost. You had Cam Santz, a 2-time state champ. He was 4th at 126. And Gabe Logan, he's a mission commit. He's healthy now. For Delby, he was 4th at 175. And, you know, as a whole, they bring back those kids. They bring back 5 more medalists. Ryan DeGeorge, who's a champion, a 2-time finalist. Tommy Marchetti, PJ Terranova, Trevor Jones, Nick Schwartz. We know how good Augie Moser is at heavyweight. You got Jesse Denegri. You have a lot of good freshmen, one being Marchetti's brother. I just think they're a notch above everyone, and Jaden's kind of leading the pack for them. And obviously, I mean, Cam Santz, he's a 2-time state champ. He's halfway to, being the 6th four-timer. But I think this team could make history in AC this year. I think they're going to get a lot of kids to the podium. And then you also had Blair and CBA impress at Ironman. You had Blair get 7 medalists. They were 2nd in the team standings behind Faith Christian from PA. Blair was pretty young last year, but I think they're going to, look more like themselves this year. We'll see them at Beast of the East in full. I talked to Coach DeTomer. They're going to be there in full. They weren't there in full last year. And then CBA, you had Paul Kenny reach the finals at 120. He finished 2nd. You had Bobby Duffy. He was the other medalist for CBA. I believe they were 8th in the team standings. Delby was 3rd. So a lot of really impressive stuff from New Jersey at in Ohio.
And with Kenny, the IO commit, he reached the final at 126 pounds, lost 4-2 to Perrysburg's Gray Burnett. Burnett going to Penn State. So, 2 of the top guys in the country, guys are going to be competing against each other in the Big Ten in the future. Probably a lot of that going on in the Ironman, to be honest. So, a big tournament for those guys. And again, high expectations for both of those squads out there. Certainly Blair included in that list, but certainly Del Barton looks like a team that is going to be extremely hard to beat. And CBA is trying to climb that ladder and get to that point as well. On that, Joe, CBA, this is a loaded team, and this is a team that has accomplished pretty much everything they want to in the short conference. And kind of taking the next step is, and beating the likes of, Del Barton, St. Joe's, the North Jersey Powers. It's really next on the list. And that's really the question with CBA. Can they do it? It's a loaded team. We're going to find out, I guess, down the line.
Well, absolutely. There are some outlets around that cover New Jersey wrestling, have them ranked number 2 in the state. We, of course, set them out at number 4. And the point I made when we were discussing where to place CBA was the fact that they have never gone into a dual meet situation and beat one of those teams head to head at full strength. And I felt like until they do that, they needed to stay behind the Bergens, the Joes, the Boscos, the St. Peter's Preps, at least for the time being. But if all those teams do show up at the Catholic school duels next month, CBA certainly is going to have its chance to prove itself and maybe put itself in position for a number one ranking. But not only do they have to beat them in the regular season, Bob, then they have to beat them in the sectionals and the groups. So but CBA is far and away the best team in the Shore Conference, and and I'm anxious to see how far they can go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a loaded team, 6 returning state medalists, and a great freshman class too, especially down low. Shiloh Joyce, Santino Edgar, the son of former Tom's River state medalist and UFC legend, of course, Frankie Edgar, Tristan D as well at 113, Colton Quinn in the middleweights, 157, 165. They picked up a huge transfer, Sonny DiMatteo from Brick Moral, who was fourth in the state at 106 last year. So, yeah, high expectations for the Colts. The question is, can they do it and beat the teams in North Jersey? We'll find out.
Hey, Bob, I think, and the other thing that's interesting about CBA's schedule
yeah,
is the fact they're going to every big tournament they can find. Powerade, Beast, and they're wrestling a limited dual meet schedule. So, it does appear that Billy Ashenault is, I think he's put more emphasis on getting his individuals ready than, maybe winning a team title. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think that's actually a greater conversation we could probably have down the line as far as teams, really the non-public schools. Like, is their view to win a team title or is it to win individual titles? What helps their bottom line more, so to speak? What helps them continue to get the best kids around the state? Is it we won a non-public A or a non-public B state title as a team, or we have this many state champions or this many state medalists? It's probably the individual one. Now, the byproduct of that is you're going to have an amazing team 1 through 14, and you're probably going to win some state titles along the way. So, I just think that's probably the view for most of those teams. I'm interested to see what you guys think about that. Not to get completely off topic, but I think the likes of Delbarton, St. Joe's, yeah, they want to win a team title, but I think it's about the, what goes on in Boardwalk Hall first and foremost. Any thoughts on that, Jake or Ryan? What do you guys think? I mean, especially Ryan, you especially, that's your area up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it, with the non-pubs. I talk to Coach Stoll all the time. He always says, like, my goal is to get the kids ready for Atlantic City. They want to get as many kids to the podium as possible. And you see what St. Joe's does. They go to all those tournaments that CBA is going to go to this year. Escape the Rock. They're not going to be at Beast this year. They'll be at the Fat 50 Duels, which we'll touch on later in the episode. But they're becoming one of those teams that's, starting to wrestle a national schedule. Delbarton's doing that this year with both individual tournaments and duels. But then you get teams like Kittatinny that wrestle a lot of dual matches. You get Passaic Tech wrestled, I believe, 34 duels last year. So you see the teams that want to focus on the individual stuff, and you see the teams that want to focus on getting to Rutgers, getting through their sectional tournament and stuff like that. So it's an interesting balance, and it's certainly, a hot topic right now. You're seeing the disparity a lot more nowadays in New Jersey wrestling.
And I think that's definitely true and I think more probably for the public schools where the winning the team championship is higher on their list. And some big news regarding one of those teams that is one of the legendary programs in New Jersey, So some major news coming out of Warren County with one of our top 20 teams, Jake.
Yeah, so number 18 ranked Phillipsburg, they competed at the Robin Leff last weekend where Gavin Galetta won the 175-pound title, but fans won't get a chance to see them back in action again until after Christmas. Coach Tim Longacre confirmed this morning that the team is halting all practices, all competition until December 26th due to skin issues within the program. So, they had a super high-profile try that I think we were all looking forward to this weekend with Mount Olive and with Middletown North. So that's been dinged from the schedule. So they'll next be back in action December 28th and 9th out at the Bethlehem Holiday Wrestling Classic. So, big news for them. They were a team that, especially if, they went out and beat Mount Olive like they did twice last year, if they beat a very good Mid-North team that I think was 20-2 last year, that those would have been some early statement wins for the Liners. But now, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wait to see them, back in a dual meet action until after the new year. So,
and unfortunately, that is a part of wrestling. Joe, going way back, we had a short conference tournament canceled one year because of a skin infection that spread through the shore. Hopefully that doesn't happen here. But unfortunately, it's part of it. I guess if you're Phillipsburg, it's better if that was going to happen, let it happen now than later in the season when they're really, hitting the home stretch. But, we'll keep an eye on the Liners and see when they can get back on the mat. Jake, you also saw Warren Hills, wrestle Hunter and Central. That's a Skyline Conference rivalry. Good early season win for the Streaks. What'd you see from them? Anything stick out to you?
Yeah, so, again, Hunter and Central's on its fourth coach ever in program history, and Ryan Manahan. He comes over after 2 years at Cherry Hill East. He was denied a chance at his first win with the Red Devils last night. Warren Hills came out and won 44-26. It was pretty back and forth through the first 5 or 6 bouts. Warren Hills won the first bout by major. That put them up early. Hunter and Central's probably two most exciting wrestlers were at 175 and 190. They were able to turn on the offense kind of at will. Really funky guys, super explosive, super exciting. And, from there, I think, Warren Hills sort of flexed its muscle a little bit. Hunter and Central forfeited at 13-20, and then Warren Hills won basically all but one of the contested bouts after that. Including Augie Zamretta, who was a state medalist at 113 last year. He took 8th in the state. He picked up a 6-2 win over Hunter and Central freshman James Fearon. And, in talking to him after the match, he said he was frustrated. He said, he wants to go out there and dominate. And he's up at 26 this year, which always seems like the weight to watch for whatever reason, when we come to the postseason. And he said, he didn't want to blame it on his weight management or anything, but he gave all the credit to the Hunter Central kid for wrestling a good match. But yeah, Zamretta clearly was hungry, clearly wants more. And Coach Casey Wanamaker of Warren Hills said, there are some guys that are hunted and some guys that do the hunting. And he said Zamretta is clearly in the category of he's doing the hunting. He has his eyes set on bigger things. And, the other thing, too, with Warren Hills is they dropped down a division this year in the Skyline Conference because they went 11-11 overall last year, and I think 1-5 in division matches. So I think that'll help kind of give them some confidence. But this is a perennial state power that is still going out and wrestling Ridge, Delaware Valley, Phillipsburg. I think they have Immaculata on the schedule. So, just because they drop down, they're not shying away from the competition. And, the same thing is true of Hunter and Central. The Red Devils were 4-19 last year. It was their worst record and only second ever losing season in program history. And I talked to Coach Ryan Manahan after, and he said, honestly, it excites him because it's a blank canvas. They lost a lot of kids to transfer, including Rhett Washleski, who was a state medalist for Hunter and Central and could have become the program's all-time wins leader. But Manahan said it excites him. Some coaches would think of it as daunting. Some coaches would view it as exciting. He said to him, it's a chance for Hunter and Central to kind of rewrite its legacy, kind of restart and get back on track. So I think those are two teams that, will definitely be interesting to watch going forward. So yeah, Ryan, what have you seen so far?
Yeah, the top 20 we put out is very North Jersey centric. I've got a couple teams I just want to quickly run through here. I guess we could start with the reigning non-pub champs in St. Joe's. They've won twice now in the last 3 years. They graduated a lot, from last year, though. Ryan Burton, Anthony Harris, Vinny Paino, to name a couple kids. But they have 5 state medalists back and 4 finalists. One of those finalists is a champ in JoJo Burke. Then you have Christian Alvarez, John McGinty, Charlie Esposito, and then Mikey Batista, who's a 4th placer. They have a couple guys back who made it deep through the state wrestlebacks. You have Ryan Mitchell, who's a blood rounder. Brian Little, he's transferring in from Don Bosco. He's got a lot of potential. Joey Peretti is back. Ben Marquez is transferring in from West Essex. And this is a really good team. Some holes there, but a contender as always, and a team that's going to have the target on their back because they're the reigning champs. St. Peter's, they bring back a lot of kids, a lot of starters from last year, 5 state medalists, 5 state qualifiers, Anthony Verdi, Joey Ruiz, Loudon Henry, Sal Barametti, and Gino Shanina are the medalists back. And then you have Josh Paparo, who's a beast medalist, Anthony Barametti, who's a blood rounder, also Robbie Rodriguez, who's a blood rounder. I think this team is really balanced. And if they can figure out the upper weights, I'm willing to say that they can make it to Rutgers to wrestle Delby. Obviously, CBA and St. Joe's are going to have a lot to say about that, but this is a really well-rounded team. You look at Bergen Catholic and Paramus Catholic, I think those teams are kind of in a similar boat. They might not have the juice to compete with the Delbys, the St. Jose's when it comes to the postseason, but they have a lot of stud individuals. Matt Mulligan, Gideon Gonzalez, Joey Canova, Sauzi Say, those are the medalists back for Bergen. Canova still has to get cleared from his knee injury. He tore his ACL late last year. I believe it was during the region tournament. But they're back, and they have a lot healthy from last year. It was a very young BC team last year. And then PC, you have Siege Hibbler kind of leading that team. He was a state finalist from 2 years ago. Guy Olsner, Nicky Polito, Nicky Barone, Joey Polici, Harry Asatri, and a lot of kids who made deep runs in the wrestlebacks last year. Don Bosco's got that trio: Dante DeLuca, Nevin Matisic, Santino Rodriguez. Dante DeLuca was a state finalist last year. Then the public school I want to touch on is Mount Olive. We mentioned them, a little bit earlier on in the episode. They have a state medalist back in Nico Gonzalez. He wrestled at 215 last week against Sal Marquez. A very good match that Bob didn't get the chance to see because the left was wrestled in a ton of different gyms. I think they wrestled one of those finals on the beach, I guess, with how many different places they wrestled in. But Nico Gonzalez is back. They have Anthony Piemonte back. He was a blood rounder 2 years ago. 10 starters back in total. They've got a stud freshman in Cole Rebels at 113. I don't believe he's wrestled yet this year, but we talk about how good Group 4 is. I mean, you look at North Hunterdon, Peaburg is going to get healthy after this whole skin thing. I would peg Mount Olive as a team to beat, and they haven't won since 2021, but you look at just how close they've come the last couple of years. They've knocked on the door. They had that heartbreaker to Ridge a couple of years ago. They lost to Peaburg last year in the sectional final. So I think that this Mount Olive team is the team to beat, but North Hunterdon's going to be very battle-tested. It's going to be interesting in Group 4, but like I said, I would peg Mount Olive as that team to beat. We have them number 5 in the top 20, the top North 4 team, the top Group 4 team. But Bob and Joe, you mentioned CBA. I think there's a lot of flavor from the Shore. You have Southern, you have Rumson, you have Howell. What do you make of the Shore as a whole right now?
In the Shore, like Ryan said, Southern, 3-time defending Group 5 champs. They're the team to beat as far as the public schools go in the Shore until someone else takes from them. CBA, as we talked about, clearly the top team with everything it has back. Howell's a team that is, has been there before. They've won multiple state championships. They bring back one of the best all-around wrestlers in the state, and Tanner Hodgins, committed to Oklahoma State. Luke Johnston, a state medalist last season at 106 pounds. A really good incoming freshman class. They're going to be interesting. Rumson Fairhaven, 2-time defending Group 2 champs. Red Bank Catholic in the mix. The Shore is going to be interesting this year, I think, after CBA. We were talking about this before a little bit off there. Joe, who do you think? Who is the number 2 team right now? I mean, you probably say it's Southern, but I think with how young Southern is, which we'll get to in depth in a little bit, but with how young Southern is, I think if you're going to get them, this might be the year, and early in the season might be the time to do it.
Without a doubt. Danny Roy, the head coach down at Southern, is going to have those kids prepared. I mean, their room is one of the best in New Jersey. So, those kids are going to get better every day. I think we're just so used to seeing Southern with hammers throughout the lineup, and, they have good wrestlers, but will they be able to have that enormous bonus point potential that we always see from them? We know they're going to be great on defense. We know they're going to contest every single point. But what will they be at the end? I think they'll be ready. You know, they are going to have to get through Hal to get to Rutgers, though. And that's another point. I saw Jackson Township last night. They wrestled their first combined dual meet. They beat Tom's River East, and they look pretty good. They got some veterans. They have some new kids. Most of the lineup is comprised of former Jackson Liberty wrestlers, but they got a huge room. Gianni Gione told us last night he has 30 kids who could be starters, who could get a starting spot. He only has 14. So the competition there is going to be keen every single day. You know, and Gianni doesn't know what they're going to be by the time February and March rolls around. But consider this, Bob, with Hunter and Central obviously in something of a rebuild, Howell and Southern in South Jersey Group 5, you know, if Jackson can get their act together and gain some consistency, they could challenge for the Central Jersey Group 5 title. And I think that's a long-range goal for Jackson. I think they're a top 10 team in the Shore. Right now, it's a little hard to decide where they could be. But, you know, you said it's going to be interesting in the Shore. I mean, just look already, Bob. Tom's River East beat Red Bank Catholic. Red Bank Catholic lost to Rumson by 3 points on Wednesday night, and Jackson beat up Tom's River East. So, you know, it sounds almost like it's going to be the football season reincarnated. It's going to be wild and competitive and you know, crazy every Wednesday night, you know, in Monmouth and Ocean counties.
Yeah, yes. Also, December's weird. I just feel like the teams, everyone's half baked. So it's like you have some of these results and you try to, you know, get some data from it. And I feel like in like a month or two, you look back and you go, okay, that meant nothing, or it didn't make as much sense as we thought it would be. Back to Southern, because I saw them in person down at the Robin Leff, which was a phenomenal tournament. 8 top 20 teams, you know, in our initial rankings. Just the tough part about that was covering it. Now, no one's going to cry for us, so I'll keep that to a minimum. But, you know, split between 2 gyms and then the finals just rolling on 7 different mats. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see most of the finals, but there were some pretty good ones. On Southern, this is the youngest team that the Rams have had probably ever, Dan Roy said, certainly as long as he's been there. And before he was the head coach, a longtime assistant under John Stout. They have 5 freshmen they're going to have in the lineup. Now, Southern always has good freshmen. Usually they just can't crack the lineup because, you know, that room is so stacked. This year, though, you know, there was a lot of opportunities, and, you know, these kids came through. Jonas Lusker was Southern's lone champ at the Robin Leff, won the 106-pound title as the 7 seed, beat the 3 seed, the 2 seed, and the 1 seed on his way to the title. They also have Nick Banos at 113. There's Deon Masenko at 132. Anthony Molinaro at 144. Not related to Frank Molinaro, Shore Conference legend and former national champ at Penn State. Also Colton Girl at 157, who they're really high on. Only a couple seniors, you know, in the lineup. You have Anthony Mason, the 2-time state medalist, and then, you know, some program kids kind of in the upper half of the lineup. So a different look from Southern in terms of how young the Rams are, but I think you're going to get what you're used to out of Southern. Like you mentioned, Joe, that gritty team, that team that just yields nothing and just gets better as the season goes on. I mean, I could see them taking some lumps this season. They have a challenging dual meet schedule as always. They enter high quality tournaments. If they get to the season, you know, the end of the season unblemished again, I think that would be a huge surprise just because of, you know, what I said, how young they are and the kind of schedule they wrestle. But for them to be there at the end, competing again for the Group 5 title, I think they probably should be right there. But again, Howell is a team that can absolutely pick them off. You know, Howell brings back, you know, a lot in terms of, you know, standout wrestlers with Tanner Hodgins and Luke Johnston. Freshman Justin Janney at 106 is one to look out for, as well as Trevor Hodgins, Tanner's younger brother. He's at 138. Also have Tyler Going and returning, you know, state qualifier. And that's a room too that is big. There's always kids waiting in the wings, you know, ready to kind of step up and take advantage of an opportunity. So, and that's an old school battle, Joe. You know, I mean, Howell Southern, what's the top man doing? is always a nice refrain to hear from the crowd when someone's riding in those two. They've had some battles in sectional finals before, some of the more epic duels I've covered. So if it comes down to those two in South Jersey Group 5, which I think we anticipate, that's going to be a pretty good battle.
I think, Hal does have Phillipsburg at home in January. Howell is not in what we call in the short conference, the big boy division there with Vianney and CBA and Southern and Rumpton. They're one division below. I would imagine their main competition is going to be Middletown North, and then, as you mentioned, Southern always has a good schedule. And, one of the teams they're going to face that they face every year is Mount Olive. And I guess I just wanted to change subject real quick for Ryan. Did you lose any faith in Mount Olive after they were taken out by Pope John on Wednesday night?
Yeah, well, I mean, they wrestled Pope John last year. It was very strategic what they did. They did a really good job limiting bonus, against the likes of Carson Walsh, who's now graduated, Donnie Almeida, and Dalton Weber, who's back, and I want to touch on briefly. I think whenever you get a Pope John Mount Olive matchup, really anything can happen. Came down to a couple points last year, and I think that Mount Olive, when they're at full strength, I think they're really good. I think they're, like I said, I think they're the team to beat in Group 4. Jake, we talked about Peaburg, the situation going on there, but when they're at full strength, how do you evaluate this team? I know you got eyes on Caldwell, St. Joe's Met. There's a lot of teams you got your eyes on, you follow closely year to year. What do you make of the teams that you're looking at?
Yeah, so, again, I think it's an interesting dichotomy that's sort of presented itself because, again, like Bob said, how much can we learn from December? But by the same token, a lot of teams that might be great tournament teams because they have, 3 or 4 hammers, but maybe don't have 14. I think that can, also be equally as instructive. We look at a team like Caldwell, who finished last year 24-2, pushed Rumson to the brink in the Group 2 state final. They bring back a lot of kids, headlined by Carmine Sipper, who's going to wrestle for Carico a lot at Navy. He's, I think, undeniably, he was a 3rd place finisher in the state last year, undeniably one of the top lightweights in the state. But they're a team that from 106 to 150, they can make you pay. If we look at the 2 duels that they wrestled against Kittatinny and Cedar Grove, from 106 to 150, they opened up a 46-0 lead against Kittatinny. Against Cedar Grove, from 106 to 157, they were up 40-3. So, they might have their holes in the upper weights, but I think down low and in the middle, they're especially strong. And I think what reaffirms that for me is if you look at their showing at the Caldwell tournament that they hosted, Bergen Catholic had 10 champs and sent basically all of its starters. Caldwell had 3, West Morris had 1, and 2 Caldwell wrestlers in Solomon Soriente, who was a state qualifier, and Rocco Conforti, who was not, but still one of their, better wrestlers last year, both picked off state medalists, in the finals. And I think that that's super instructive that, they have guys who are not just county champ level good or state qualifier level good, but guys that are picking off state medalists. And so I think if you're Coach Sean Romano, who just picked up his 100th win actually to open the season against Kittatinny, I think that you've got to be really encouraged by that. And the other team, sort of in a similar vein and for similar reasons, that's caught my eye is North Hunterdon. And, Bob, I know, saw them down at the left, but, Caden Wadle knocking off, Anthony Mason and, a bunch of other big time upsets that they were able to spring down there against some of Southern's hammers. They had 1 champ, but they had, I think, 3 other finalists. So, there, and listen, Dave Bell was our coach of the year last year for a reason. I think he showed that, it's not just at Bergen Catholic where he's gotten kids from all over the state that, gives him an edge. I think he showed last year at North Hunterdon, when they won Group 4 after they went under 500 his first year. He is a great coach, and he's able to get a lot out of, not just the kids who are on the level of Caden Wadle, Reed Busby, Joseph Celentano, but some of the more marginal kids too. And, they're another team I think that has some questions in the upper weights. But again, I think these tournaments are super instructive, and you get to see a lot of the best kids. So I think, to me, that those are kind of the two teams that, okay, you look at the tournaments and the duels, and it's hard to bet against teams like those this year. And it's not just those guys. I mean, I'm sure, Bob, I know you saw some good wrestlers at Rumson last night, including a transfer from Wyoming Seminary. Ryan, I'm sure you have a few others. Joe, I'm sure you might have some that have caught your eye. So yeah, I mean, who have you guys seen kind of on the individual front that's really impressed you?
I'm gonna before we get to that, I just wanted to circle back to RBC real quick, because we were talking about them before. I mean, they started number 20 in our NJ.com top 20. They're 0-3 now, but having seen them on Wednesday night in that 3-point loss to Rumson, I was impressed. They battled. They only won 6 bouts. They won by bonus in all of them. They pushed Rumson to the brink. And if at 120 pounds, if Rumson's Eamon Fry doesn't get a reversal with under 30 seconds left to beat Mako Vizosi 3-2, I mean, RBC could have pulled out his signature win, missing almost half of their lineup, including 2 state qualifiers. Rob Fritz, a transfer from Sayreville, and Caden Sternlieb, a transfer from St. Thomas Aquinas. So as much as the loss to Tom's Reese surprised us, early, then they came back and had a really good effort in defeat against Rumson. So again, that comes back to it's a rivalry match, so you never know what's going to happen. I think the matchups, the way it fell, just helped RBC. But again, that's an interesting team to watch when they get healthy, because what I saw on Wednesday night was a team that had some potential and really battled hard, knowing that they were up against it and didn't have its full lineup in. And then lastly, with Bill not here, I just want to touch on some of the South Jersey teams. Obviously, Camden Catholic, defending non-public B champs, ranked number 5 in our top 20. The Irish, a loaded lineup, defending state champ Sammy Spalding, returning state finals Cage Jones, Paris State 4th place finishers Michael Kraft and Jaden Simpson. So they're certainly the team to beat in non-public B. You have Delsey, which has only won 4 straight Group 3 titles, and really right now on paper is the heavy favorite to win a 5th in a row. There will be a challenger. Right now, I don't know who that's going to be. Delsey far and away the favorite right now. Avoided an injury scare too. One of their stars, Amari Van, happened to be watching his bout against Jackson's Amari McCann. Try to say that together and not confuse the two. Amari Van, Amari McCann. But Van went down with looked like a bad knee injury. Was holding his knee, kind of yelling out in pain. It did not look good, but he was able to come back, wrestle a 3rd place bout. So it looks like disaster averted there.
And they have Anthony DePaul too.
Yes, that's true.
Big pick up for them.
So Delsey again. They're just a machine down there in South Jersey Group 3, and then they get to the Group 3 final and they've won 4 in a row. So the Crusaders, a force to be reckoned with down there. Off Route 47, and Lower Cape May coming in at number 19, unranked last year. They lost in the South Jersey Group 2 final, a controversial match to say the least, but they bring back 3-time state place winner Chase Hansen and a pretty strong group around them. When Bill gets back, he'll touch a lot more, certainly in depth on the South Jersey teams. But wanted to hit on those before we hit on the individuals, which there are plenty. We can go around. I want to circle back to the left again and toss it to you, Jake, because one of your guys, Reed Clossy, one of the few bouts I was actually see in person in the finals and watch from start to finish. He had one of the best wins of the opening week in taking out a 2-time state medalist to win a tournament title.
Yeah, and I know you talked to Coach Mike Markey also about kind of their attitude with the left and how they view December. But yeah, I mean, especially not only did he knock off a 2-time state medalist, but to do it up 3 weight classes. He was a blood rounder last year at 144. I think, and clearly I think 165 is going to be one of the sort of preeminent weights to watch all season. I think that certainly puts him on people's radar as not just, a nice feel-good story, but as a legit contender. And I mean, Bob, you saw that match. Obviously, it was a 4-2 final, so maybe you can speak to, the tempo and the rhythm of the match. But I think, again, the fact that you're able to win close matches like that early, I think only helps you down the line when the lights are brighter, the stages are bigger, and the margin for error gets thinner and thinner. And so to be able to know that you can grind out a win like that and go the full 6 minutes, I think is certainly encouraging. And, Ryan mentioned, Ben Marks from West Essex transferring to St. Joe's. Reed Clossy is somebody who, I know Coach Mike Markey has made it a point to say that he's stayed home and he's, shown kind of what's possible at West Essex. And he is sort of one of the big, public school hopes in Essex County this year, along with a lot of the guys at Caldwell and, some of the guys at Nutley and wherever else. But, I think for him to go from a blood rounder at 144 last year to not missing any time, or, not missing any time, but rather, not letting the weight get the better of him and going up 3 weight classes and knocking off a 2-time medalist, I think is super impressive. So I think he's one that as the season gets going, you're only going to hear more and more about.
Yeah, and that was a 4-2 win over Point Pleasant Borough junior Jake Clayton, who was a 2-time medalist, 4th in the state last season at 157. It was a great bout. It really was a very well wrestled bout from start to finish. Clayton's a strong kid, at 165 and where he was last season, 157. And you could kind of tell it was starting to get the sense that it was going to be whoever gets the first takedown is going to win. And that ended up being Clossy. And then even more impressive than his takedown was his takedown defense in the third. I mean, Clayton was in a couple times and he was able to hold them off. And that's impressive in its own right, going against a 2-time state medalist. But like you said, up 3 weight classes from where he was last season, to have that strength, especially early on, was impressive. And I asked him about that, and he said he feels good. He said he usually walked around close to 165. So not really cutting too much weight now. Certainly, the follow-up question is, well, if you're walking around 165, you can go down to 157, right? And he beat me to the punch and said, yeah, 157 is probably in play. He's going to see how he feels. We can go on and on about which wrestler's going to go which weight classes right now, but I think we should table that discussion for a while. But he did. He looked good. And, you losing the blood round, that's tough. And to come right back in your first tournament and make a statement like that, that puts him definitely on the radar as a kid, earning a spot on the podium come March.
Bob, he's not going to be the only kid bailing out of 165. I mean, Mr. James goes 165. There's going to be a lot of kids heading south and north to get away from him.
Yeah, that's the truth. That is the truth. Again, at the left, there was Paramus Catholic was a team that was impressive. They had a tournament high 4 champs. Nick Barone with a big win over a returning state 4th place medalist as well, beat Michael Kraft of Camden Catholic. They had 4 champs, and Ryan, you touched on them again, but that's a nice early season showing from the Paladins. And Barone is a similar guy, a blood round guy who lost a controversial, blood round match last year, a bunch of stalling calls at the end, and he ended up losing by a point to Jackson's Amari McCann, who we mentioned earlier. So that was a big one for him to come out and get a victory there, like I said, over returning state medalist.
Yeah, Paramus Catholic, I mentioned all the blood rounders. Nikki Polito is another one. You have Joey Polici as well. They have the 1 medalist in C. Chibler, but they could easily have a couple more. And that's a team that went 9-8 last year in duels. They cracked our top 20 at the very end. I believe they finished number 20. And I mean, they wrestle a gauntlet every single year. They want to get the best possible. And they're also, they're at Escape the Rock and stuff like that. They're skipping the beast this year, but they want to wrestle anyone they can. Public schools, all the non-pubs if they can. They're not going to be at the Catholic school duels, but they want to get everyone on the schedule. And they have a lot of kids who I believe are going to take that next step this year. You mentioned a couple of the Mount Olive kids that were at the left. I mean, I would love to see Cole Rebels. I can't wait till he makes his season debut. I don't know if he's struggling with weight. A lot of the kids in the lower weights this time of year do struggle with weight. I don't have any, knowledge of why he hasn't wrestled yet. But the kid that I mentioned, Dalton Weber, he made his debut the other night against Mount Olive. He didn't wrestle in the try against 2 out-of-state teams they wrestled. But this is a kid who has 2 state medals. He was a 3rd 2 years ago as a sophomore. He was 8th last year. I believe he was at 132 last year. He's a senior. He's an App State commit. And, I got to see him the past couple of years up close at the HWS tournament, and he's a pleasure to watch. He's really, really tough to score on. He's great at getting out of trouble. And when he gets to his offense, he's incredible. And he'll be at the Beast of the East. I'm looking forward to seeing him there. You got a couple other kids. I obviously mentioned Cole Rebels there in Morris County. I'm also looking at Tommy Borgia. He medaled in the state tournament for the first time last year for West Morris. He's a Princeton football commit, really good two-way lineman for them, but he's also a stud heavyweight. He was at 215 the previous year. Then you have Brody Neal, another medalist from West Morris. West Morris is kind of a sneaky Group 2 team. They're really, really top heavy, but they're also getting a couple kids back from last year who won double-digit matches. So, West Morris has a couple kids. Morris County as a whole does, and there's a lot really to look forward to individually up north.
Then a couple guys, more than a couple guys down in the Shore Conference, but two guys I was able to see on Wednesday night that Joe, you and I were talking about. First one is Sonny Amato, the Rumson Fairhaven standout junior, state champ as a freshman, third last season after losing to eventual champ Blaze Mealy of Princeton in the semifinals. He wrestled back for third. He's an Iowa commit. Took a forfeit, much to his chagrin, against Red Bank Catholic, way up at 165. He weighed in at 157, but he was, very light on the scale, closer to 150. The plan, I believe, from talking to those guys there, is for him to certify at 144. I think he should be there, probably in their next match. So get some flexibility there with Sonny Amato. Joe, you remember last season, he was pretty devastated after he lost in the semifinals, but he came back and wrestled for third. And even going back and talking to him then and talking to him a little bit on Wednesday night, it seemed like he's got a little bit of a renewed perspective. And again, he's a dangerous guy, one of the top guys in the country at his weight class. And I think we're going to see another huge season out of him.
I would agree with you, Bob. He's kind of a, mellow, loosey-goosey kid. And, he doesn't look like he is affected by the pressure. But, you take a 1-point loss in the state semifinals, when the expectations are that you're going to go to the final and probably win a second, because remember, the year before he was the OW in Atlantic City. Mm-hmm. I think it will renew your perspective, and I think it will enhance your focus and your training and everything else. So obviously he's got all the skills going to Iowa, and I think he is in for a really big season again. And if Rumson's going to get another Group 2 title, they need him, to be everything he can be.
Yeah, he's got to lead the way for sure. He's state medalist last year. So was Joaquin Duque at 138, who I believe won like whatever the maximum amount of bouts you can win in the wrestlebacks last season. He did that and to get a state medal. And they also have an impact transfer from Wyoming Seminary in Wyatt Fry, who's not related to Eamon Fry. Wyatt Fry, originally from Arizona, wrestled for Wyoming Seminary, the prep power last season. He was seventh in the prep nationals, and he was impressive. His first bout, he was up at 175. Again, Rumson had most of its lineup up, so we're not going to see him that heavy the rest of the year. I think he weighed, what did he weigh in? I got the weighing sheets in front of me. Yeah, he weighed in at 165, but on the scales at a little over 157. So I imagine you're going to see him down at 157. Who knows, maybe even lighter this season, but 1-4-0 over Red Bank Catholic's Christian Rodriguez, but it was a good bout. You could see he's slick. He's very calculated, doesn't take unnecessary chances. Rodriguez did a really good job of just scrambling out of some tough spots. And that was a bout that Rumson just needed the win there, and he got that. So, again, first time seeing him, he comes certainly highly regarded out of Wyoming Seminary. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what he becomes when we start to see Rumson get into the teeth of its schedule, certainly at Beast of the East, where you're going to see him wrestle against, some of the best kids in the country. He's just one of those kids nobody knows a lot about, other than, he wrestled for Wyoming Seminary and placed in the national tournament. We'll learn a lot about him in the weeks to come.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Beast, Bob. We're talking about all these individuals, mm-hmm. and I mean, that's kind of where you get to see everyone. I remember 2 years ago, Sonny Amato was going on a tear. He makes the podium, and I was like, Joe, what do you know about this Sonny Amato kid? And he's like, who the heck is Sonny Amato? So, you learn about a lot of kids. And I was talking to Coach DeLuca the other night. I'm surprised the Fries aren't related, and I feel like you kind of just have to have a Wyatt down in South down the shore who's a really good wrestler every year.
Wyatt Fry just sounds like a wrestling name too.
It does. Yeah, you got Wyatt Stout, now you got Wyatt Fry. But, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the Beast. You have pretty much half the top 20 going down there in Delaware, a couple dozen New Jersey schools in total. Some teams are bringing everyone. A couple others are just bringing a few kids. We don't know who specifically is like officially going to be wrestling. The brackets haven't come out yet. I believe they come out in a couple hours. But we have a general idea of, who's going based on a couple of guys I've spoke to. But I counted well over 30 state medalists who were going to be there from last year, and maybe even around 40, depending on who shows up and who doesn't. But the team headliner is going to be Blair. They're bringing everyone, like I said, and they kind of split it up between Ironman and the Robin Left last week, but it's going to be a full showing for them this week. Obviously, loaded 7 medalists at Ironman. I think this could be a clinic for them. They won 21 in a row from 99 to 2021 at this tournament, 21 team titles in a row at the Beast. They didn't attend in 2022. That's when Delby won, but they won it in 23. And then last year is kind of when the streak ended, right? They showed up. They were missing a couple kids, but they didn't win it last year. Admittedly, I don't know the depth of the out-of-state teams. I know how good some are individually, but I mean, at least in New Jersey, I would think that Blair is, going to be on top, no doubt. And, only 8 medalists from last year at the Beast are coming back. You have Vinny Anello and Eddie George from Blair, Sonny Amato, Tanner Hodgkins. You have Mateo Vinciguerra from Woodstown, Josh Paparo from St. Peter's, Colton Haggerty from Township, and then Rhett Washleski, like Jake mentioned, he's now at Immaculata. And obviously, the guys I've mentioned, I'm looking forward to watching. You guys mentioned a few of them. We haven't mentioned, I don't think, Killian Coluccio yet from Lacey, the state runner-up. You have Sammy Spalding, Cage Jones, like Bob mentioned. Sammy Spalding is a Beast runner-up. He lost to Anthony Knox a couple years ago. And then Cage Jones medaled that year as well. You have Jackson Weller, the Delran state medalist. Anthony DeAndre, I believe, is going to be there, a 3-time state medalist from Watchung Hills. Jackson Slotnick from Williamstown. Anthony Jackson from Paul VI, I believe, is going to be there. Alex Reyes, Rocco Salerno from Seton Hall Prep. The list goes on and on. I mean, it's going to be a ton of fun. I think a lot of kids are going to get to the podium on Sunday. We'll see about champs. I mean, we got a couple last year. Knox won most outstanding wrestler. I believe Caden Ricciardi won his second Beast of the East title last year. He beat Carson Walsh in the final. I don't know about champs. Maybe we get a couple, but I think you're going to get a lot to the podium. I think it's going to be one of those years at the Bob Carpenter Center where you're going to see how deep this state is, how talented this state is, really amongst just national competition there down at the University of Delaware.
Yeah, it's a great tournament, obviously, one of the preeminent tournaments in the country. And, for our teams to be able to just, take a relatively short drive down 95 and get down there to wrestle some of the best in the country. Certainly big early in the season. One of the names you mentioned that I wanted to go a little bit more in depth on was Alex Reyes of Homedale. Joe, you profiled him towards the end of the football season when Homedale's football team was making its run to a sectional title because, Reyes had a difficult decision to give up football to focus on wrestling. He's a Rutgers commit, state medalist, and he's eyeing a really big season. And, what better way to kind of show that you're not only in the conversation to be on the medal stand again, but as a state championship contender, if he can go down and have a big tournament at the Beast of the East.
And he is looking to test himself. When I wrote that story, I spoke to Rutgers coach Scott Goodale, who said he hasn't even scratched the surface of his potential. This was the first summer he did not, worry about football. He, went around the country. Was the first time he went to Super 32. He wrestled well there. He said he's bigger, stronger. His skills have gotten a lot better. And, I'm anxious to see what he can do, and he does have Tanner Hodgins from Howell in his weight class, if I'm correct, right, Bob?
Yes. Yeah. As long as as of right now, yeah, both those guys are at 190.
And, briefly to touch on Hodgins. So he's a kid who was 3rd in the state last year. And, he must have had a hell of a summer because, He gets the full ride offer from Oklahoma State. He's ranked number 2 in the country. So I am really intrigued to see what he does down in Delaware, because for the first time, he's going to face the pressure of being a favorite as opposed to just, coming through the bracket. He faces expectations now. So, I think it will be very interesting, to see how that affects him. He's really a nice kid. He's a great kid. He's got tremendous skill. He's a powerhouse. Jake, who are you looking for from your area, maybe to make some noise down in Delaware?
Yeah, I think for me, Ryan brought him up before. I think Anthony DeAndrea from Watchung Hills is probably the biggest one. He's committed to Penn to wrestle. He's a 2-time state medalist for the Warriors. And he, along with, I don't know if Cody Pritzloff, son of Middletown South and Penn State legend Glenn Pritzloff, is making the trip. But certainly I know DeAndrea is. And for Coach Dan Smith, who's back at the helm of Watchung Hills after 7 years as an assistant, I actually bumped into him at the Rutgers Oklahoma match, and he was telling me just kind of how excited they are for DeAndrea and what kind of big things they're expecting from him. So I think he's one. Again, I think if Immaculata is going to be there, certainly Rhett Wachlewski's got a big, I'm not going to say target on his back, but state medalist, again, left a legacy at 100 and Central, now trying to carve out a new one for Coach Rodney Van Ness and the Spartans. And, they're a team, they had, I think, 4 or 5 30-match winners last year, including a couple who did so as freshmen. They brought in a transfer from Princeton in Cole Rose, who was a 30-match winner and a state qualifier as a freshman. And sorry, DeAndrea's a 3-time state medalist. My bad. I didn't want to shortchange him one. But yeah, so I think it's a lot of those, Skyland Conference teams that, I think we'll see down there who, really have a chance to make some noise kind of on the individual front.
And another team that's going to be down there that I know it caught Bill's eye early in the season. I don't think they're going to have contenders for the medal stand. Maybe we're wrong there, but that's Kingsway. Kind of in a rebuilding mode, probably isn't the right word, but they have some really good young talent that they're looking forward to. They have 3 freshmen win titles at the season opening John and Betty Vogeting tournament out of Paulsboro, and then 4 freshmen won matches in a dominant 48-15 win over their rival Clearview. So Kingsway is also going down to the Beast. So that might be a situation where you look at that bracket afterwards and go, okay, these freshmen are continuing what has been a strong start. So I know Bill wanted us to, mention Kingsway there. Again, we got to pick up the slack for South Jersey while Bill's out. But again, Kingsway down there, a bunch of teams. Real quick on Hodgins, Joe, you mentioned, his stock rose in such a drastic way. I mean, he was already a 2-time state medalist, but he won the U17 U.S. Open and then took bronze at the, World Tournament U17. So yeah, it's been an amazing offseason for Hodgins, and now we're going to see how much of that is going to translate, to the high school season. Bunch of stuff coming up. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Bob. I think you're right. That's an incredible skyrocketing, climb. So, he, without a doubt, is one of the kids from the shore that we're going to keep an eye on. And remember, high school wrestling is different than, than the out of season tournaments. And we've seen a lot of kids who have some super 32s and things, not necessarily have that translate to high finishes on the podium in Atlantic City.
So we're not a ton of time left before the calendar flips to the new year. And certainly with the holiday break, we're not going to have as much going on, but still a lot of really big tournaments and some duels coming up. We got the Fat 50 duels. We have Mustang Classic tournament down at Brickmore, which is always a good one. We have the Sam Cali tournament and a bunch of stuff going on. So we'll start with you, Ryan. The Fab 50 duels, that's a pretty good slate of teams that are going to assemble at North Hunterdon. And, I know we've been talking about that, as a group. What has caught your eye, some things you want to see, when those Fab 50 duels get underway next week?
Yeah, so that's going to happen on Saturday. So when this podcast comes out, it'll be the next day on the 20th. It's a new dual tournament. It was created by none other than Dave Bell. He's got his long list of contacts from when he was at Bergen in touch with a lot of the national powers there, and they're hosting it at North Hunterdon. They have Delby on hand. They're going to be, in full force. St. Joe's is going to be there. Blair's B team is going to be there because, like I said, they're going to be at the Beast of the East. Wyoming Seminary, a couple other national powers, Poway in California, Massillon Perry from Ohio, Green Farms in Connecticut, and then Pontiac from Rhode Island. I think it's going to be a great event, for the two powers in Delby and St. Joe's. But for North Hunterdon, I mean, this is what gets you ready for later in the season. Like when they hope that they're going to be at Rutgers, like these are the days you look back at and you say, hey, we wrestled a lot of tough matches and we are both individually and as a team, and we're ready for this moment. I teased the Mount Olive Group 4 stuff earlier, but a team like North Hunterdon, like Mount Olive's not wrestling here. Like North Hunterdon has the chance to grow here. And this is what gets you ready for that match at Rutgers. Peaburg's going to be, very much in that mix as well in Group 4. But this is as big a deal for North Hunterdon as it is for Delby and St. Joe's. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think you're going to see this event go on for years to come. I love these new dual tournaments. Obviously, we have the Catholic school duels right after the New Year flips. So, I mean, this is going to be one of those where you're going to look back and say, wow, that was real fun.
And down in the Shore Conference, we'll have the Mustang Classic at Brick Memorial on the 27th. That I think the Robin Leff has kind of passed that in terms of one of the preeminent, in-season, New Jersey only tournaments. It's still a really good tournament, Joe. I think every year we come out of there and we say, we probably saw, 5 to 10 state medalists and a couple champs, and we're usually right. So I'm expecting more of the same. I know we're both going to be down there. Again, every season that tournament seems to deliver, where there's always good matchups. The finals always end up being really entertaining. I know I'm looking forward to that. What about you?
Yeah. I think the one thing that maybe is going to be a little different this year is, Brick Memorial is, geez, look who they lost. They lost, three-timer Harvey Luddington and other senior wrestlers who helped them have huge amounts of success in the Mike Kiley era. Tony Caravella, the founder of the program, his nephew, Steve Gianos, is now the head coach of the program. So, it's going to be interesting to see and how they fare against some teams that are going to bring some guys. I mean, Paulsboro's come to this tournament. High Point has come to this tournament. We've seen teams from South Jersey come up. The thing is, it's a nice tournament because I always felt like the competition, for the most part, it was a level playing field, and kids were going to get a chance to get some tough bouts, but at the same time get some much needed experience. I'm at Brick Memorial, I guarantee you at least 2 bouts, and that's what kids need at this point in the season is mat time, Bob.
I totally agree, and I think going back to the Robin Leff, as much as it was a little bit annoying to cover, if I'm being frank. I understand why it's run the way it is, and they don't keep team scores there. And talking to a bunch of those coaches, their big thing was we can get kids down here and we can get them big matches and not worrying about team scores or winning the tournament, and really test them in these first couple weeks of the season. And you learn a lot from that. And then you can formulate a game plan of what you need to work on, what you need to improve. So while these tournaments, they're going to pit a lot of the best wrestlers in the state against each other, as we've said throughout this podcast, all eyes are on March. They're all on Atlantic City and Boardwalk Hall. So anything you could do to better prepare yourself for then, coaches and wrestlers alike are going to sign up for that. So I think we're going to get a lot of that, with all of these, holiday tournaments, the Fab 50, the Mustang, and also the Sam Cali, which, when that tournament began, it had a pretty good field, and now year in, year out, that's one of the best ones around.
Yeah, I mean, so, that's up at Morristown Armory Saturday and Sunday, December 27th and 28th. Ryan and I will both be there. And, last year, the field included 16 medalists from the 2023 season, plus around an additional 30 state qualifiers. And that doesn't even take into account the guys who wrestled at the Cali, who then went on to medal or went on to Atlantic City. So Chris Potetto, coach at Dumont, former coach at Don Bosco, does a great job. He takes super seriously, getting all the best kids or as many of the best kids as he can in the field. I mean, St. Peter's Prep last year sent a bunch of its state medalists. St. John Vianney sent, Pat O'Keefe. Rumson sent Sonny Amato. Tom's River East sent James Lynch. So people take this tournament very seriously, and to win a title there and to win, one of the championship belts that they give out, I think definitely means something. And I think it's good too. They bring in some out-of-state teams. Ponagansett, who we mentioned before, has been there in the past. Green Farms has been there in the past. So I think you'll definitely see a lot of that. Similar to Joe, a lot of really tightly contested bouts. And I mean, this is a tournament that, listen, correlation doesn't always equal causation, but if you do well here, it tends to bode well for you, and it can make stars out of people. I mean, I still remember 2 years ago, we were sitting at FDU Madison, and Blaze Mealy from Princeton knocked off, I think it was it Barry Norman from Blair?
Billy DeCraker.
Yeah, Billy DeCraker from Blair at the time. And that was sort of Blaze Mealy's coming out party and his announcement on the scene as, a legit state contender. And then, you look at what Blaze went on to do the rest of his career at Princeton, and, it boded well for him. So I think this is, again, in Central and South Jersey, I think you've got the Mustang. In, North Jersey, I think you've got the Cali, although certainly like Delsey always comes up to the Cali and has for years. So, I think both of these tournaments are great early season tests that, very well might be precursors to bouts we'll see in Atlantic City.
Yeah, wrestling really, December hits, and you go from the fall season, especially, Joe and Ryan, you guys covering football, and it's just like football ends and wrestling starts like 20 minutes later, and you're trying to wrap your head around everything. And it's like you look up and you have all these, big time duels and these tournaments with, some of the best guys in state wrestling, and, guys knocking off state medalists and all this stuff. And it's definitely an interesting time of the year trying to figure out what it all means and how big it is. Before we wrap up, got to talk about the girls' Beast of the East, which is going down as well at the Bob Carpenter Center. Joe, any insight on that?
Not a lot, Bob, but Mike Holcomb, our correspondent who handles most of the girls' stuff, he thinks it's going to be a great year in New Jersey for the girls. And, the girls' Beast down in Delaware on Friday and Saturday. And then the best teams and best kids are all coming to Jackson. Speaking to John Christopher, the tournament director last night, that tournament's on Sunday. He said they could have as many as 360 girls participating. Wow. So,
and that's the Queen of the East tournament.
Queen of the East at Jackson Township High School now. It's going to bring, terrific wrestlers from all over New Jersey and some from outside. So, a big kickoff for the girls too, as well as the boys.
And the girls will be wrestling at Rutgers this year in team state championships. So certainly we'll be talking a lot about that as the season goes on. We'll have Mike on, at some point to touch on all things girls wrestling in New Jersey. Guys, anything else catch your eye? It feels like we've had a lot go on in the past. What has it been? A week, not even more than a week. Again, I'm like losing track of when exactly the season started. It's earlier and earlier every year, but it really is kind of the appetizer. And as a bunch of coaches said, they view December as the preseason. It might be, but there's a lot of substance out there, and it's definitely been interesting so far. I will say that.
Yeah, I actually just got a text from Sean Smythe. He told me that Cole Rebels is not healthy. I don't think it's severe. He was missing multiple starters in that duel the other night against Pope John, but I just got a text right now from Sean Smythe. So there's your answer on Cole Rebels. He's not healthy right now. We'll see what happens these next couple of weeks and when he gets back into action.
Not uncommon. I mean, there's multiple teams who have guys out, whether it's, there's some wrestlers who have some, lingering things from football season for the football players, and then just guys who are just banged up from off-season wrestling and whatnot. And, we'll see some of them after the calendar flips. So at some point, all these teams will be healthy and we'll see them on the mat competing against each other. For now, there's plenty of great wrestling out there. Like you said, we'll be covering it all. Beast of the East, we'll have coverage from that. Looking forward to Mustang Classic, Sam Cali. You can find that all on NJ.com. As always, any parting thoughts, guys?
No, well, let's have a good season. Hopefully, we got some surprises and have some things to write about.
I don't think we're going to have any shortage of things to write about.
think
If wrestling season holds true to form.
Hey, Bob, I think we should mention that the epic match we're going to broadcast tonight that people can watch on demand anytime.
That is true. You will be able to at the NJ.com and see the call of a pair of returning state championship teams. Will be North Hunterdon hosting Southern Regional. North Hunterdon defending Group 4 state champs, and Southern Regional, as we mentioned, the 3-time Group 5 state champs. Dan Long will be on the call. Jake there covering it, so you can read Jake's story on the website on NJ.com. And again, talk about a December matchup. Two returning team state champions, and two of the powers in the state is certainly now North Hunterdon, on the rise with Dave Bell at the helm. That should be a good one.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, good catching up for the first one of the season, and looking forward to many more of these throughout the year. So for Jake Aferiat, Ryan Patti, Joe Zedalis, I'm Bob Batters. Thanks again for joining us on Weighing In, and we'll see you next time on NJ.com.